In the year 1938, as the Great Depression still held its grip on America, a small town in the Midwest lived by its own fragile rhythm of hope and survival. Every morning, on the corner of Main Street, 5 men gathered beneath faded advertisements for Dr. Pepper and Metz beer. The signs were bright, cheerful, almost mocking because nothing in these men's lives felt bright anymore. Their suits were worn thin, their shoes dusty from miles of walking, and their faces carried the quiet exhaustion of years without steady work. Yet they came here every day leaning on the railing, talking in low voices, sharing rumors about jobs that might appear or might never come at all. One of them, a tall man named Sam, always arrived first. He had a wife and 2 children waiting at home, but he never told the others how afraid he really was. Instead, he laughed at their jokes, nodded at their stories, and pretended the world had begun to collapse under his feet. One cold morning, Sam brought news. A factory in a nearby town might reopen. A chance small, uncertain, but real. The men listened as if he were reading a prophecy. That same morning, miles away on the outskirts of a different town, 2 children stood outside a fragile shack patched together with scrap wood and bits of tar paper. The boy's jacket was too thin for the cold, and the girl rubbed her hands together to stay warm. This was Sam's family. They didn't know about the factory rumor yet. They only knew the sound of wind creeping through the cracks of the walls, the icy floor beneath their feet, and the strange hope that today might be better than yesterday. Inside the shack, their mother boiled water for a soup that had more water than anything else. The children played in front of the door, pretending that the broken boards and scattered tools were something magical treasures, toys, worlds their imagination could still build even if reality could not. They didn't see the hardship. They saw adventure, and that innocence kept the family alive. Hundreds of miles away, in a crumbling neighborhood of St. Louis, 4 other children wandered outside an abandoned brick house. The windows were shattered, the shutters hung crooked, and the yard was littered with broken boards. But this was their playground. They were not Sam's children, but they lived the very same story once shared by millions across the country. Barefoot, hungry, and wiser than their age, they grew up surrounded by decay yet somehow managed to find laughter in the ruins. The oldest boy had heard men on the street whisper the same rumors Sam did. Factories reopening, railroads hiring, roads being built again. Rumors that spread like sparks, carried across towns, across states, across the entire wounded nation. And so, these 3 moments, the men waiting for work, the children surviving in a makeshift home, and the children playing before a broken house, were not separate at all. They were 3 beats of the same American heartbeat, 3 scenes connected by struggle and by the quiet courage of people who refused to surrender. By the end of 1938, life began to shift. Sam did get the job at the factory. It didn't make them rich, but it gave his family warmth, food, and a chance to dream again. The children in St. Louis grew older, moving from abandoned houses to crowded schools, learning that their broken childhood had forged a strength they would carry for the rest of their lives. And the men on the corner, their daily gatherings slowly faded, one by one, as they found work or moved on toward new opportunities. The Great Depression didn't end suddenly. It faded like a long, dark shadow, but the people captured in these photographs, ordinary, forgotten, and unnamed, showed what survival truly meant. Not winning, not thriving, but holding on long enough for hope to return. As winter began to loosen its grip, the small town in the Midwest slowly stirred to life. Snow melted into slush, and the muddy streets reflected the pale sun, making the town look both forlorn and beautiful at once. Sam's mornings now began with hurried breakfasts, the clatter of dishes, a tiny chorus of normalcy that felt almost miraculous after years of scarcity. At the factory, the roar of machinery replaced the anxious silence that had once defined his days. Sam marveled at the steady rhythm of work, the conveyor belts, the steam, the whir of presses. Each bolt tightened, each part assembled, felt like a small act of defiance against the hunger and fear that had shadowed his life. And though his paycheck was meager, it carried a weight far beyond its value. The weight of dignity, the knowledge that he could provide again. Back at the shack, his children were learning the harshness of survival in ways no books could teach. The girl, Sarah, began to notice the thinness of their clothing, the frayed edges of blankets, the constant need to improvise. Yet she also discovered ingenuity within herself, a way to turn broken toys into treasures. scrap wood into furniture, and rationed meals into feasts of imagination. Her brother, Tommy, grew fascinated by the tiny joys of their small world. The birds that braved the winter winds, the ice patterns forming along the edges of puddles, the warmth of a shared laugh that could eclipse the cold. News of work spread slowly from town to town, sometimes whispered by traveling salesmen, sometimes carried by the wind itself. In Street Louis, the children who had once wandered abandoned streets now found small jobs delivering newspapers, helping at markets, or shining shoes. Each coin earned brought a spark of possibility, but also reminded them of the distance between childhood and responsibility. The laughter among the ruins had not disappeared, it had grown quieter, more guarded, but it persisted, a stubborn ember of resilience. By mid-1939, Sam's town had transformed subtly yet unmistakably. The empty storefronts slowly found tenants. The streets, once barren, now carried the sounds of hammers and wheels and human voices. People lingered longer at doors, exchanged smiles more freely, and began speaking of futures that might actually exist. Some men who had once loitered beneath faded advertisements had vanished into new towns, new jobs, new lives. Others remained, sharing in cautious camaraderie, still whispering rumors and hoping for better days. Across the country, stories like Sam's multiplied silently, a tapestry of endings woven from millions of small, unremarkable victories. In rural Iowa, families planted gardens in leftover fields, knowing each seed carried the fragile promise of survival. In New York City, immigrants held tight to each paycheck, each opportunity, each fragment of normal life reclaimed. Every mundane act, cooking a warm meal, mending shoes, tending a fire, was a quiet rebellion against the darkness that had threatened to engulf them. By the end of the decade, the nation was far from healed. Factories still closed, banks still failed, and hunger remained a persistent companion. But in the faces of the people captured in photographs, children barefoot in the cold, men leaning on railings, families crowded around rationed meals, there existed a kind of invisible victory. They were alive, they were enduring, and they had found a way to hope, even when hope itself seemed scarce. Sam's children grew, carrying the lessons of scarcity and perseverance into their adult lives. Sarah learned the value of careful planning, of compassion for those less fortunate, and of the joy that could be found in small, unexpected things. Tommy discovered that courage was often quiet, that bravery could mean standing in the wind with nothing but a scraped knee, and a heart full of determination. And in St. Louis, the children who had played among ruins would become the first in their families to attend school, then work, then dream in ways previously unimaginable. The photographs remained silent witnesses to the ordinary miracles of survival. They did not tell of heroic battles or legendary figures. They told of men, women, and children who refused to vanish quietly into despair, who walked miles in worn shoes, who found laughter in broken streets, who worked in factories that barely paid, who created homes out of scrap wood and imagination. They told a story not of sudden triumph, but of enduring humanity. And so, the 1930s left their scars on towns, on streets, on souls. But they also left a quiet testament that even in the darkest years, people could endure. That even in the shadow of despair, small acts of courage and hope could grow, stretch, and bloom into the lives that would rebuild a nation. By the time 1940 arrived, the echoes of the Great Depression were still present, but they were no longer defining. They were a memory, a warning, and a source of strength. The people in those photographs, ordinary, anonymous, and resolute, remained as proof that survival itself is a story worth telling.